Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. I did have something else planned for this week, but I was sidelined for most of last week in bed with this season's cold, which meant virtually no training, which wasn't a lot of fun. So instead, I thought I would give a quick rundown of how I approached training after a week off due to illness. It's that time of year where it starts to get chilly in my garage gym, so I've been preparing for the colder weather by reinstating the winter flooring. It's simple interlocking matting, which, unlike the wooden flooring, doesn't get uncomfortably cold for your hands. Unfortunately, the cold also prevents it from getting too soft. Something I'm not keen on for handstands. It's a quick job, it only takes around 10 minutes or so, and it does make a big difference. So I have the same opinion on illnesses as I do on injuries. If you're actively participating in the world, then it's only a matter of time before you pick something up, so it's inevitable that you will have some kind of setback. But the truth is, all training is littered with setbacks and plateaus, but the important thing here is having a pragmatic approach that allows you to plan for this, in order to maintain consistent progress. So the question is, what should you do once you've recovered? Should you go straight back to the progressive overload from before? Probably not. So it will ultimately be determined on the type of training that you're doing, but I'm working on the assumption that your training is similar to mine. In the case of fairly intense bodyweight strength training, so exercises such as the handstand push-up, along with handstands that incorporate balance and proprioception, and some flexibility training. If that's the case, then I think it's pretty likely that you will get quickly demotivated if you try and carry on from exactly where you left off. Now, I think the approach has to be slightly different if you're suffering from an illness which affects your body as opposed to your head. In this video, I'm talking specifically about head colds and anything that affects you from the neck upwards. From the perspective of a head cold, I tend to find it's actually pretty easy to get back into some kind of training. Though for obvious reasons, the requirements of handstands mean that they can be particularly difficult, and I tend to wait until the symptoms have passed completely. So the first recommendation I have when you're getting back to your training is use a low to mid-range intensity. So take an exercise that you have been working on, and let's use the handstand push-up as an example. The idea here is to scale it back so you're performing something that is fairly easy, but most importantly it's achievable with really good technique. And I have to say, it's important to not be afraid to scale it back further than you'd actually like to, as this is simply a way of getting the body reacquainted with the required movement pattern. My second recommendation is to use a higher overall training volume. Now, this is a function of the first point to some degree, as you should be able to perform a greater volume if you're working at a lower intensity. But I also recommend incorporating other easier exercises that will act as accessory work to the main exercises in your actual training program. Again, using the example of the handstand push-up, then this might be other bodyweight exercises such as basic push-ups, or you can include work with barbell or dumbbells, for example, the Z press. My third recommendation is to increase the intensity with each session. And I like to do this as I feel it is a good way of judging your recovery and your capacity as much as anything else. If you've only been out for a week or so, it's likely that you haven't really lost much strength. So you don't want to be spending too much time working at low intensities. So it's important to get back to the appropriate working level as quickly as you can so that you continue to make progress. So fourth up on my list of recommendations is to monitor your grip strength closely if you don't already do this. This study on the National Library for Medicine website proposes that grip strength is an indispensable biomarker for older adults. It also states that it is a reliable measure for sleep impairment, cognitive performance, and a range of other issues. Therefore, I think it stands to reason that it's also likely to be a reliable measure for your current strength capacity. I like to measure this on a regular basis, so I really recommend getting hold of something like an electronic hand dynamometer, as it allows you to keep track of your current grip strength and gives you an idea of how well you're likely to perform on a daily or weekly basis. And finally, my fifth recommendation is to incorporate a greater amount of cardiovascular and conditioning work. It's well known that strength doesn't disappear immediately. In fact, after just 1 week off, you may have lost very little strength, if any, but you could simply be feeling the effects of a nervous system that is suppressed and is currently unable to produce enough force required for some of the exercises. Cardiovascular fitness, on the other hand, tends to disappear a lot faster. It seems that this element is often overlooked in bodyweight and gymnastic style training, but a reasonable level is still needed to cope with both the volume of this kind of training and also the recovery that is required to ensure you can still train on a daily basis. I tend to find it's pretty helpful to incorporate a little bit more on a regular basis as warm-ups and throughout sessions. So skipping and rowing are usually my go-to exercises, but you can also get a really similar cardiovascular benefit in the way that you structure your training. You can do this simply by manipulating the training variables, so reducing the intensity, increasing the volume, and also shortening any rest periods. This is also a preferred approach of mine in the colder weather because I find the long rest periods required of bodyweight style training are not conducive to producing good results when it is freezing. I plan to go into further detail about my seasonal training approach in another video, but for now I hope all of these points are helpful in some way. If you have a different approach to tackling training after an illness, or if you have any questions, then please pop these in the comments below. And if you haven't already, please do hit the thumbs up button and subscribe so you're notified of new videos. As always, thank you for watching, happy training, and I'll see you next time.